Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, never met me, just kind of know me as a name on a screen. My name is Lori. I am actually the founder of the Antarctic Experience. Most of you are coming from the group Bucket List to Booked, which is a sister group of the Antarctic Experience. And the Bucket List to Book group is 100% focused on helping you plan your bucket list trip to Antarctica and get ready for your trip. I am an expedition guide in Antarctica. I believe that experiences are the best souvenirs, and that Antarctica is actually a place that can change you, even if you haven't been there. But if you're going to travel there, I want to make sure that you get the best and the most accurate advice. And so that's why myself and other expedition guides who help run the Bucket List to Booked group, we've teamed up to make sure that you get the best and most accurate advice out there. The other expedition guides that I've teamed up with, they also happen to be polar travel agents. So we've all had decades of experience working for the operators and the ships that you guys will actually travel on. So we still actively work in the field, and I believe that we can give you kind of the best insider information. And if we don't work for an operator or work for a particular ship, we definitely have friends that do, so we can reach out to them if there's any questions that we can't answer. So one thing that I hear a lot is that people don't know or they don't understand what the different options are for traveling to Antarctica. So that's what I'm going to focus on today, is the different options for traveling to Antarctica, how you can tell the difference between the different itineraries, what I think is the most important things to consider when you are planning your trip or looking at the different itineraries. And we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions as I'm going, just go ahead and pop them into the chat, and I'll make sure that they get answered. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you are seeing my screen. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we're going to start with what are the different options for traveling to Antarctica. So as you can see here, I've started off with kind of a generalized map. And what's really interesting is you can actually travel to Antarctica from multiple different places. The most popular gateway is from Argentina and Chile, from the tip of South America and over to the Antarctic Peninsula. That is where the majority of the itineraries operate from. And there are also itineraries that go from Australia and New Zealand and cross over into the sub-Antarctic islands here, and then eventually to the Ross Ice Shelf. And you can even go to Antarctica via South Africa, but that is more of an overland experience. These dots here are showing the different kind of inland experiences that you can have in Antarctica. You can actually climb Vincent Massif, which is the tallest mountain in Antarctica. There are people who actually want to climb the tallest peaks on all 7 continents. This dot here represents one of the access points for different camps that an operator from South Africa operates, different overland camps. And then you can also go ahead and visit the South Pole. But I'm going to be focusing mostly on ship itineraries here. And I'm going to zoom in to start with on the Antarctic Peninsula, because this is the most popular place to visit. And this is where the majority of you are going to go, at least for your first expedition to Antarctica. Now, I warn you, Antarctica is very, very addictive. There's something special about Antarctica that pulls you back. And you're probably going to want to go more than once. So as I said, most of the itineraries are traveling from Patagonia here, either Argentina or Chile, to the South Shetland Islands and the Antarctic Peninsula. There are also itineraries that will visit the Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and Antarctica, and then back up again. They will do kind of this sort of loop here, most of the time going in this direction, sometimes going in the opposite direction. And there are also itineraries that just visit South Georgia or the Falklands and South Georgia. These itineraries that I've just put up are kind of the most popular ones. So we use the terms classic and in-depth in the group. And if you decide to work one-on-one with one of our team members, which is one of the free perks of the group, when you fill out a questionnaire, we're going to ask you if you're looking for a more classic itinerary or in-depth itinerary. And the difference between the two is basically both of them go and visit the Antarctic Peninsula and South Shetlands area. A classic itinerary tends to be around 9 to 11 days total, with about 3 to 5 days in Antarctica. And an in-depth itinerary just has more days in Antarctica to explore. So in total, they're around 12 to 14 days, with around 6 to 8 days of exploring in Antarctica. You can even do some more in-depth itineraries that have up to 14 days exploring around the Antarctic Peninsula and the South Shetland Islands. The next itinerary you're going to see is the circle crossing itineraries, and those tend to be kind of the same length as an in-depth itinerary, but they have a goal of crossing the Antarctic Circle here. And generally, you will cross the circle and you'll explore in this area. This little narrow passageway is called the gullet here, and sometimes you can even go into Marguerite Bay in here. So that is depending on the conditions. Other itineraries that is becoming more popular is to fly the Drake, meaning that you take an airplane from Chile and you actually land on here on King George Island. So you skip the Drake Passage completely, and then you explore the peninsula area. These itineraries in total are a bit shorter because you don't have to have the days crossing the Drake Passage, but it generally will spend around 4 days or so in Antarctica. The last one I have listed here is the loop, the South Georgia, Falkland Islands, Antarctica loop. As I said, they often will go this direction, Falklands first, then South Georgia, then Antarctica, and back up. But sometimes they go in the opposite direction, and sometimes you think they're going in one direction, and then you get there and they go in the opposite direction. All of these itineraries are flexible because of weather conditions. So some other combinations, I mentioned some of these already, but you might just do South Georgia and Antarctica. Some itineraries just do Falklands, South Georgia, some just South Georgia. Some are focused on this area here in the Weddell Sea area. One of the more popular itineraries that focuses on the Weddell Sea is one that attempts to reach Snow Hill Island here. This is where there is the northernmost breeding colony of emperor penguins, and the operators that go there need to carry helicopters. These trips are generally earlier in the season, and they are a little bit longer because you need that time to get down there and also to visit the emperors. But there are itineraries that explore this area of the Weddell Sea as well. Most of the classic or in-depth itineraries are going to explore what area we call the Gerlache Strait here. This is the Gerlache Strait and the South Shetlands. But depending on weather conditions, those itineraries might also pop into the Weddell Sea. So even if you don't sign up for a Weddell Sea itinerary, you might end up going maybe at least into the Antarctic Sound. All of the actual places you visit are very weather dependent. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then the last two that I've listed here are ones that go from the peninsula all the way around Antarctica and end up in the Ross Sea, and you will end your trip in New Zealand. They also have ones that go the opposite direction from New Zealand back to the Antarctic Peninsula. And then a few operators offer itineraries that explore the Chilean fjords here that don't actually go to Antarctica, but some combine the Chilean fjords with a short Antarctica trip. So as you can see, it is a little confusing because there are a lot of different options, but most people are focusing on the first four. So again, just zooming in here to the to the peninsula of Antarctica and the South Shetland Islands. This is the area where you will be exploring. As I said, this is called the Gerlache Strait here. This is the polar circle, and then we have the Weddell Sea here. And when you start to look at itineraries, you're going to see that they all have different names. And that also can be very confusing. So what I did was I went and I took names from different operators' websites. And basically, all of these names are names for either Antarctica Classic trips, Antarctica InDepth trips. Some of them, Antarctic Express, that could be a fly-in trip, but I've also seen that name used for what we call a classic Antarctica trip. So what's really important is not necessarily to look at the name, it's to look at the number of days that you're going to have in each location. And that's a way that you can kind of tell whether you're looking at classic and in-depth, what kind of itinerary you're looking at. Same with these bottom names here. All of these names, Spirit of Shackleton, Epic Antarctica, Antarctic Wildlife Adventure, those are all names for the Falklands, South Georgia, Antarctica itineraries. So these are all names for basically the same exact itinerary. Now, there are going to be differences between the operators, differences in what they include in each trip, a little bit of nuanced things with each operator, but I'm speaking in kind of general terms here. So when you actually go to the websites to look at the maps for the itineraries on the operators' websites, this is what you're going to see. These are all maps for classic Antarctica trips. And as you see, they all kind of make these very generic loops here. And some of them name places. So you see some of the places are named here. Sierra Cove, Deception Island, Port Lockroy. I'm here to tell you not to pay attention to any of that. That is for marketing purposes only. The itineraries where you actually go is dependent on so many different things. And it's something that changes from moment to moment based on the weather and the ice conditions. So these itineraries are just a general guide. And if anybody tells you that they can promise that you are going to go to a certain location, they're wrong. I've worked down there since 2006, and there are no promises to being able to go to any specific place. All I can tell you is that you're going to go into the area of the Gerlache Strait, into the area of the peninsula. The only places that are more of a promise is that if it says it's going to cross the circle, we will do everything that we possibly can to attempt to cross the circle. If we say we're going to go to the Falklands and South Georgia, we won't just cut those out of the itinerary, but we might turn the itinerary upside down if the weather is going to be bad. I was on a trip last year where we were supposed to go to the Falklands first, then South Georgia, then the peninsula and back. And what happened was the weather was just too bad for the Falklands and South Georgia. We knew when we got there, it would be too windy for us to operate. So we decided to turn it upside down, and we went to the peninsula first and then around. So my point is that you need to be really flexible with exactly where you go and put trust in your captain and your expedition team to give you the very best experience that they possibly can give you. Our goal is to make sure that you have a good variety of places to see and that you do as many activities as possible with the weather and the ice permitting. So I mentioned that when you look at the different itineraries, to try not to pay attention to the names, but to look at exactly how many days you're going to have in each location. Now, sometimes the operator does a really good job if you drill into the, well, they all pretty much do a good job of, if you drill into the daily itinerary that's listed on their website. Not every operator's day one is when you leave. Some operators' day one is in the hotel. So you don't want to look at itinerary and say, oh, this one's 14 days and this one's 10 days. The 14-day one must be longer. What you want to do is you want to look at exactly how many days you're going to have, let's say, in the peninsula. So look at the itinerary, see where day one is, day two, and here's what you can calculate in your head if the website doesn't do it for you. It takes approximately, if you're crossing the Drake with the boat, it takes approximately 2 days to make this crossing. Now I say approximately because that varies according to weather conditions and according to the different vessels you're on. They can sail at different speeds. So this takes approximately 2 days. It takes approximately 2.5 to 3 days to cross from the peninsula to South Georgia. It takes approximately 2 days to cross from South Georgia to the Falkland Islands, and then approximately a day to a day and a half to cross back from the Falkland Islands to the tip of South America. So keeping that in mind, you can actually count how many days you'll have in each location. As I said, the operators' websites generally do a really good job of this, but don't just look at an itinerary and say, oh, 14 days. Okay, that means I have a long time, because some of those days might be days that are in a hotel and not actually days when you are on the ship. All right, so I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my screen. And I saw a couple questions that came in in the chat, and I will start with those, and then everybody you can unmute yourself or you can put your questions in the chat. But the question that came up is, can you please talk about what you can generally see in the different islands, South Georgia, Falklands, etc., versus the peninsula? Great question. So in the Falkland Islands, you can actually walk up to nesting black-browed albatross colonies and nesting rockhopper penguin colonies. That is one of the highlights of the Falkland Islands. There are a few different islands that you can do this on. So it's something that tends to be on every operator's wish list. As I said before, and I want to emphasize once again, the itineraries the locations you actually visit are all weather dependent. Even when you get onto the ship, you're never going to get an itinerary saying this is where we're going to go. What's going to happen is you're going to have a nightly meeting called a recap and a briefing, where you'll recap what you did that day, and then you'll have a briefing of what your intentions are for the next day. So in the Falklands, the intentions are generally to try and visit one of these colonies that has nesting rockhopper penguins and nesting black-browed albatross. In South Georgia, South Georgia is just wildlife paradise. So what's different about South Georgia is you get to see king penguins, and massive numbers of them, hundreds of thousands of them in some locations. The South Georgia Islands are also an area where there's a lot of nesting albatross. We have nesting wandering albatross, light mantle albatross, gray-headed albatross there. So you have a chance to get really nice closer looks at those birds. You'll also, depending on what time of year you'll go, you might see elephant seals breeding or fur seals breeding, but at every time of the year, you will see elephant seals and you will see fur seals. There's also, if you're into birds, there's an endemic pipit that lives in South Georgia. It's the only place that you can see it. So that is a highlight for some people. So if you go to South Georgia and the Falklands, you will increase the number and variety of species that you see versus just going to the Antarctic Peninsula. But you will see a lot in the Antarctic Peninsula, but there are only 3 main penguin species that you'll have a chance of seeing down there: the gentoo, the chinstrap, and the adelie. Hope that answers your question. Anyone else have any questions?
Hi, I have a quick question.
Sure.
For weather-wise, is there a month that has like clear skies? My aunt has some friends that went down there and they said it was really foggy and they couldn't see much. So is there a better time of year to go?
Also a really good question. The season in Antarctica runs from November to March. At the end of March, actually, there's some itineraries that can go a little bit into April, I think now, but basically March. There isn't a real time of year that I can point to that is like, oh, you're going to have clear skies and no wind. Antarctica is really unpredictable, and pretty much at every time of the year, you have a chance of winds. You have a chance of snow. In kind of January, February, you can have a chance of even rain now that it is warming down there. It's generally more overcast than it is clear, just because of the weather. But I have had trips where I have blue skies and no wind. And then I've had trips where it's snowing and cloudy and windy the whole time. So it really just is kind of the luck of the draw. But you have to go in knowing that, you know, that flexibility that you may not get that. The only thing is, if you want, say, that midnight sun, you need to go, you know, in that December area. If you want more, if you don't want to have to stay up until 3 a.m. for a sunset, that's more November and March time. Question, Beth. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Hi.
Hi, Nisha. Nia.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, okay, so I'll be traveling all the way from India, and going to be a very long journey for me. And at the same time, I do have a limitation on the number of leave that I can take. So I'm essentially looking at about 2 weeks plan, which
Okay.
also includes traveling from India back and forth, right?
Yes.
And so my question to you is that if I only plan in terms of crossing the Antarctica Circle, and not going to the Georgia or Falklands, will I be missing out on the wildlife a lot, or what? I mean, will I be
No,
able to?
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you're going to go on, even in our groups, and people are going to say, don't miss South Georgia, don't miss South Georgia. That's what everybody's going to say, because South Georgia is mind-blowing. I will tell you, South Georgia is mind-blowing. But Antarctica is mind-blowing too. And Antarctica is amazing. And I might be in the minority, but I think an Antarctica trip where you really get to spend a good number of days there and experience a lot of variety is so special. It'll be different than going to South Georgia as well. But I know so many people that go to Antarctica and just, I don't think they're missing out on anything. I mean, there are species you won't see, but as the experience goes, I think it's incredible. And I don't think that you should not do it because of that. And in fact, one thing that I think people don't always take into consideration on the South Georgia itineraries is how many days you're going to be at sea versus how many days you have in each location. Now, when I answered Kylie's question, I talked about how unpredictable the weather can be. So the more days that you can have in each location, the more chances you have of doing activities. So if you go on a trip and you only have, 3 days in each location, but you had a chance to go on a trip that had 4 days in each location, I would always choose the 4 because it's very easy to lose a day to weather. So one of the advantages of just doing an Antarctica only trip is you have more days to do more things. And if you happen to lose a day to weather, lose 2 days to weather, then you have that time. With your 2 weeks, you'll have to calculate. I don't know if an in-depth or circle itinerary will work with the 2 weeks. Generally, it takes kind of the 2 weeks to sort of travel and then go on one of the more 10 to 11 day Antarctic trips, which tend to be more the classic trips. So in maximizing your 2 weeks, I would say to try and see if you can find an Antarctic trip that has like 5 days, at least 5 days down there. If you can do a more in-depth one and cross the circle, but you might be pushing your 2 weeks there with travel from India.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Best time of year to see penguin chicks? Well, let's see. They start on the peninsula. The chicks generally will start hatching if everything is running kind of on schedule in December, mid-December, end of December. And then the parents are going to be guarding the nests for basically the month of January, and starting in February, the chicks are going to get bigger and start doing what we call crashing, which is kind of gathering together while their parents go out to get food. And they get bigger and fluffier at this time, February, towards the end of February, beginning of March, until they also fledge. So if you want to see little chicks, you're going to want to go kind of end of December, beginning of January. If you want to see bigger chicks, I would push it more towards the end of the season. Before that, you'll see penguins on eggs. If you go early in the season, that's the only time you can actually tell a male from a female penguin, if you know what I mean. You're catching what I'm saying. All right. Overview of the different types of ships. Yes. And let me write your name down. I can tag you in a post that we have in the group that that gives you all that information. Let me just write your name down. Okay. So the different types of ships, we have yachts, which are 12 passengers and under. Those could be sailing yachts or motor yachts, and we do offer some trips on those. Some of our community members have been. There's one sailboat that we work with that's a 14 days in Antarctica, really in-depth trip. It's only 12 people, and it includes camping and kayaking. It's a really great experience, very different kind of experience. After the yachts, you have ships that are called Category 1, which are anything under 200 passengers. And then there's Category 2 ships, which are 200 to 499 passengers. And then over 500 passengers cannot actually land in Antarctica. So everything that's a yacht, a Category 1 or Category 2, you will have the ability to get off the ship and do activities off the ship, be the Zodiac cruises or landing and walking around on Antarctica. But if you are on a ship that's over 500 guests, you will not be able to get off of the ship. What are the activities that one should not miss? Are they always for an extra charge included or a lottery? Oh, let's see. This is a hard question. The activities you shouldn't miss are going to Antarctica. That's the activity that you shouldn't miss. Not every ship has extra activities. And by that, I mean camping or kayaking or paddle boarding or snorkeling or something like that. The activities that are included are Zodiac cruises, landings in Antarctica, polar plunge. Most ships will do a polar plunge. But other companies do offer some of these extra special activities like kayaking or camping, heli flight seeing, things like that. There are snowshoeing. There are some of these that are included. It is going to be operator by operator. There are some trips that are called base camp trips or all access trips, where all of these things are included at no extra charge. But most often, those types of activities like camping and kayaking, for example, those are the most popular ones. They are an extra charge. And depending on the operator, will depend on whether that's something you book ahead, something that you book when you get on the ship, something that's a lottery or not a lottery. So this is operator dependent. I would say that if you're considering an adventure activity, the one that I would put at the top of my list is kayaking. Either one of the immersive kayaking programs where you get to kayak multiple times, or just a one-time kayaking experience. It's a really special way to see Antarctica. And if your operator that you're considering offers it, I would say that that's one that I think is really special. If Fatima wants to be tagged in the ships too, I can do that. How often do the flights to Ushuaia get delayed or canceled due to weather? Should we arrive a few days earlier than departure, or one day is enough? And how many days should I allow to stay in Ushuaia after the planned excursion to be sure I still have the chance to make another trip if the original one gets canceled? Okay. I would say it's always a good idea to arrive at least 2 days early to Ushuaia, because lots of things can happen with travel. Last year for me, I was in the US. I was supposed to arrive 2 days before. There was a huge ice storm, and I barely made it to the ship. And that was with, I work for an operator, so that was with a whole team of people working to rearrange my flights to get me there on time. So it is always a good idea to leave extra time to get to Ushuaia. The flights from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia can also be canceled. There's a lot of wind in Ushuaia, and so that can cancel or postpone trips. So yeah, having an extra day or two isn't a bad idea. And then for the second part of your question, I'm not sure I really can answer that. If for some reason you get all the way down to Ushuaia and something happens with your original trip, if you've booked through us, let us know, and we can, be looking for another option for you. But there are also travel agents right in Ushuaia where you can walk up and work with them if you wanted to try to get on another ship immediately. The next question is, November through March is the season, but someone told me mid-December has longer daytime, so it should be better than November. Not sure better is the right word. It's different. November is more about scenery. It's pristine. It's ice. There's tons of ice around. Penguins are coming back. It's the beginning of the season. Things are melting. Things are coming alive again. December is great. You're getting more and more daylight. You're starting to get into that midnight sun, there's still a lot of snow on the ground. January, some of the snow is starting to melt by kind of the end of the season. You don't have really as much snow on the different landing sites. It just depends on what you want. If you want those longer daylight times, if you want sunsets, if you want ice, if you want penguin chicks, you have to prioritize a little bit about what's important to you, and then we can try and help you plug in when the best time to go is for your personal goals. So I can't say one's better than the other because it's a personal choice on what you want to see. Okay, also Denise with tagging on the ships. Okay.
And I have a question on, you're talking about the operators and some of them you have to pre-book. How far in advance should we, because I know lots of deals happen that are cheaper, a lot closer to the date, and a lot of times kayaking and camping are already sold out. So how far in advance do you need to pre-book? Do you if you can kind of estimate?
Yeah.
Or if you can't, you have a last minute deal that's really great and there's no camping or kayaking, is the person missing out at all?
Good questions. So there are deals all the time. We have exclusive deals in our group that aren't advertised. So if you're working with one of our team members, we can get you exclusive deals. People offer early bird deals as well. Right now, there's early bird sales for 2024-2025 season. Generally, if you're really wanting to do one of these adventure activities, as you mentioned, you do have to book ahead. And that would be at an early bird deal or a special sale. There was just a special 50% off sale that was run last week. It sold out in, less than 2 days, 48 hours, I think it sold out. But there were adventure activities that were still available. Are you working already with one of our team members, Kylie?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. Well, if you want to be, you can fill out our survey. It's pinned on the group. But if they know what you're looking for and what's important to you, they're going to be on the lookout for these kinds of things. Or if there's a last minute sale that comes up that has an adventure activity that you want to do, they're going to be keeping their eye out for you. They're your personal assistant, personal travel assistant, basically, to be doing that work. So you don't have to be keeping up on everything and then emailing and trying to figure it out. And we have direct lines to all of the different operators. So it's sometimes faster to get through us versus going direct to the operator sometimes, especially on some of these bigger sales that go fast. We can book those directly. If you don't get an adventure activity, are you missing out? No, it's amazing. Honestly, it's amazing. It doesn't matter. You could literally just plop me on deck, and it's an incredible experience. And you will have time in Zodiacs. Your guides will generally turn the engines off so that you can have quiet time. It's just, quiet time in Antarctica, just floating around like that. You'll have time on land. If you can't do, say, kayaking, it is an amazing experience, but you'll still have an amazing experience. And then for things like camping and heli flight seeing and even kayaking to a certain extent, everything's weather dependent. So I have seen camping get canceled more than I've seen it go because of weather. So I wouldn't hang your entire expectations on doing these adventure activities, because you could get there and they could be canceled anyway because of weather conditions. Solo traveling. Are there solo travelers? Is it mostly couples? What about single supplements? Okay, great questions. We have a lot of solo travelers. So there are so many solo travelers going to Antarctica, and this works a couple of different ways. If you are open to being matched with somebody of the same gender, then you would just book the cabin that you want, and the operator is going to match you with someone of the same gender. So you wouldn't pay anything extra for that. There are some operators that have dedicated solo cabins. They're a little bit smaller than the other cabins, but they're priced not quite as low as like sharing a cabin, but they're not as high as, say, buying your own full cabin. Because what you're going to find is a lot of operators, if you want the whole cabin to yourself, that's generally meant for 2 people, you'll have to pay what's called a single supplement fee, which can be 1.7 or 1.8 times the price of just booking it like you were sharing. Now, there are some operators that waive that fee. So again, if you're working with one of our team members, we can advise you on which operators have solo dedicated cabins, which operators are going to waive that solo supplement fee or have a special for that, or help you with getting with somebody if that's something that you are interested in. Lots of people travel solo, and I know people that have made like some of their best friends just getting randomly matched with somebody. Okay, when we make a Zodiac tour, do we get the winter clothes from the ship? I think our cell phones will be offline all the time on the ship, but do they still work in the cold weather? Okay, I'll start with the first one. Every time you get off of the ship, you will need to be dressed appropriately, and that is in full waterproof gear. Some operators will provide you with a parka, some do not. Again, this is something you need to find out ahead of time to make sure if you need to bring one, that you bring one. But most of them, you will have to bring your own waterproof pants. There are some that do supply that, but again, most of them do not. Parka is more common to supply than the waterproof pants. So every time you get off, you'll be in your waterproof jacket, you'll be in your waterproof pants, you'll be in waterproof boots, and then any layers underneath. And you will need to bring those layers as well. And we have packing lists that can help you, and we can advise on what you can bring. Of course, it's individual, depending on how warm or cold you run, or where you're from, and whether or not you're going to feel extra cold. You are correct. Your second part of your question about cell phones, you're correct. You will not have cell service. I recommend keeping your phone on airplane mode. That conserves the battery and also will allow you to use the Wi-Fi on the ship if you want to check your emails or send a WhatsApp message. They still work in the cold weather. It can drain the battery a little faster, especially if your phone is a bit older. So I always recommend bringing kind of one of those battery packs with you. It's not a bad idea to have that in your bag or in a pocket, just in case you're using your phone a lot and you run your battery down. Okay, more questions. Itinerary questions, or any questions really. All right. Well, I hope that you guys learned something. Oh, we've had a question pop in. Do the ships have photographers that supply pictures after the trip? Some do, some don't. So again, it's going to be operator dependent. But there's always guests who share photos back and forth. So if you don't feel like you're the strongest photographer, there's always somebody on the ship that's willing to share some photos with you. But some operators do gift you slideshows or images afterwards, and some do not. It's going to be operator dependent.
Hi there. A quick question.
Sure.
Is there an itinerary where I could fly the Drake Passage one way and get the experience of the ship the other way?
Yeah.
To save on time?
Yeah, there are itineraries that allow you to fly one direction and sail one direction. Now, just to be aware, the flying itineraries are also weather dependent. So you might end up where on one end or the other, you might end up having to sit and wait for the weather to open up. And that can happen. It can also happen on the ship where the weather in the Drake is bad, where you have to either wait in South America or you have to leave Antarctica early in order to beat a storm. So with both the flying and the sailing, you may have delays according to the weather. But yeah, it's a good way to do that, is to fly one way and sail one way. It's not as common, but there's definitely itineraries that do that. I want to stay 10 more days in Argentina. Would you advise me to make Antarctica first or at the end of my vacation? I would advise you to go to Antarctica first, because that's, I don't know, that's the way I like to do it. You could kind of do it any way you want, really. But I would say Antarctica first, and then from Ushuaia, you can jump off you can fly to El Calafate and experience that part of Patagonia, even cross into Chile, Torres del Paine. You can go to other areas in Argentina. But I guess it's kind of up to you on what you want to do and how your operator does things. There are some trips that include the flights from Buenos Aires. So some people like to start their trip with the group and then end on their own versus the other way around. It's kind of personal preference, but I generally say do the Antarctica first and then go traveling. I don't know why I say that. That's, I guess, just my opinion. Fatima, how can I get hooked up with one of your agents? Awesome. Yes. So as I mentioned, the group is run by all expedition guides, and then some of them happen to be travel agents. I am not one of the agents, but we've got Lauren and Kit and John, who are all ready to work with you all. And I'm going to pop the link to our travel survey in the chat, but it's also in the group. And for those of you who aren't looking at the chat, it is travel.theAntarctic Experience.com/survey. So travel.theantarcticexperience.com/survey. And that will take you to a survey. And one of the questions is going to be, what itineraries are you interested in? And hopefully after this talk, you can comment on that, which one you think you're interested in. And then there is a place at the end to let us know any other additional information. So if you were here today and you want to comment on something that you learned or ask a specific question for either, I wrote that in the chat. Sorry, I wrote it as a direct message to somebody. Let's write it to everybody. I'm sorry, I was easily distracted there. So if you have something specific that you want to let one of our team members know, that's something that you want or something that we talked about or a clarification that you might need on a question, definitely let them know. And someone will get back to you usually really fast, and you'll get a direct contact and you can ask them all your questions. Of course, you can put them in the group as well. Let me write this survey. Okay. Can I know about payment method if you book with us? Again, that is something to talk about with our team members, whoever you get paired with, and whatever expedition you go on is going to they'll talk about payments, whether that's a wire, a credit card, however that works. That will vary operator to operator, and they can talk with you about how that would work. Okay. Anything else? All right. If you do have more questions, I am always in the group. And if you're not already a member of our sister group, the Antarctic Experience, or if you're joining us from the Antarctic Experience and you're not a member of the Bucket List to Booked group, I encourage you guys to join them both. They are complementary groups. The Bucket List to Booked group is 100% focused, as I said, on travel and helping you guys plan your travel and ask questions and match you with the right operator for you, because just because one of your friends or someone online says, oh, you should travel with this operator, doesn't mean that that's the right operator for you. So we are kind of fanatical about matching you with the right operators. And then the Antarctic Experience group is more general Antarctica group. It's there for inspiration, news, educational events, sharing your experiences. The group is very diverse. We have people there who have worked in research stations, travelers, people who are just interested in Antarctica. So I think you'll find the groups to be very complementary. And if you're already in the Bucket List to Book group, you'll automatically be accepted into the Antarctic Experience group. So once again, thank you guys so much for attending, and do let me know if there are other specific topics that you want to learn about that I can do more Zooms on or more posts on. And if you like this, also let me know that, and I will plan more of them. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or evening or whatever time of the day it is for you. Bye-bye.